Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very nice to have a returning visitor to the show. You may remember that I was whacked over the head with the big stick some months ago, in which my author of the day had written a book telling us all about the truth of law. And of course, you may remember that he released a book where the title apparently was not important. It was the contents of the book that was. Well, he is a prolific writer. He's been writing loads. And he very kindly sent me one of his latest that has been recently published. It's called The Great Brain Robbery. Why, he asks, are we so stupid? And it does seem that we are. I thought it was stupid of me not to have him on the show, so I have got him on. His name is Paul Yates, and he joins me now. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you back.
Well, it's good to be back.
And thank you very much for sending me this massive tome. Now, I know that some people get a bit, oh God, a big book, I can't cope with that. But the beauty of this one is, although it's a lot of pages, it's very easy to read because it's, I wouldn't say it was large print. You know, it's not that you've got to go and hold it at 6 miles away, but it's on yellowy paper, which is easy to read, and largest text, and actually, like the previous books that you very kindly sent me and I've read, very easy to read. You write in such an everyday style without, you know, university language and complicated words, and yet the point comes over very easily. And I thought it's worth talking about this book because as you go through it, you go, oh, yeah, you're putting more of the info that some of us may already know, but you lay out a lot more of the stuff so we get a real clear picture. And I know you've got some other books that we're going to talk about, but let's start with this one then. He says, holding up The Great Brain Robbery. Having written the first two books, which were sort of all about, you know, dealing with enforcement officers and how corrupt the legal system was and this, that and the other, tell us what this one is about and what prompted you to write more.
Well, when I was writing, I mean, the first three books actually, Poking Crocodiles, the title.
Oh yes, because that's a novel, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's Poking Crocodiles, the title is unimportant, and The Big Stick. So those three books deal with how we've been, shall we say, ushered down a certain path in thinking that this is how things work, and they quite clearly don't, because, you know, on a daily basis, we're proving that that's not the case.
Absolutely.
So when I started writing the first of those, I was already halfway along the path thinking, what else is there in this world that's not how we've been told? And sort of it's been a progression, and I sort of came to the point of realizing, why are we so stupid? Why do we buy everything that we're told by authority? And we don't even stop for a minute to pick apart the carcass and find out what's really going on. You know, we don't look into it any more than just a periphery thing. So that sort of it planted a seed of thinking, you know, I need to work out why, how, who, what's going on. Why are we at this point? Because like you, I know that the Victorian period and before, if you ever see a letter written by somebody, just an average Joe, the writing's beautiful, the language is amazing. It's almost a foreign language to us now, and you think, well, what's happened between?
Well, I mean, I know here we are in the 21st century, supposedly the most sophisticated, cultivated that we've ever been. And the dross that comes out,
I get.
so even in a daily newspaper,
Yeah.
and on television, the language that is used is just despicable.
It really is. I get sort of letters from banks, obviously, and debt collectors and energy companies and all these professional organizations, and the English is diabolical in these letters. They can't even formulate a sentence. And there's typos and everything. It's just crazy. And you think, well, what's happened? How have we got to this point? So that was the seed planted, and I needed to find out. So I mean, it's really been like a 20-year mission because you see it all and it sort of simmers away at the back of your mind and you think, well, why? How? What's going on from the Victorian period where, most of science and the benchmarks of empirical science were established in the Victorian times. And they didn't have half the tools and equipment you know, and yet the
I know.
principles are still the basis of modern science. So you obviously there's something been lost along the way. So the process of that was discovering what's happened and who's behind it, and that's what this book is. But it's not just a commentary. I figured out what the solution is as well. Um, there's sort of indicators in that book, as well as pointing out what most people know and going into great depth, things like wind farms and electric vehicles. They get a real hammering in that book because the
Mm.
science isn't valid. It's just not valid. And yet here they are, our experts are trying to get us all to switch over and to do this and there's no science behind it. It's
And people are accepting it. I mean, not
exactly, this
not
is
the
back to
not
the
the people
point.
who've got the wind farm or the solar panel in the field next door,
Mm,
but they're sort of taking on the principle of, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We'll have an electric car and this,
yeah,
that, and the other, and
yeah.
oh, you can dim the sun and it won't affect me because we've got this solar panel. I mean,
Yeah,
some
there's
of
a
the things that,
disconnect. There's a
yeah,
disconnect in what you're being told and what you accept, and then if you think about it, there's a break in there, and you think, wait a minute. So the more you pick that apart, the more you discover that it's just marketing.
yeah,
That's all it is, just marketing. So yeah, everybody gets a real kicking in that book for all this nonsense.
deservedly so.
Well, yeah, yeah, and I mean, many people do know it, but also many more do not.
Exactly. I mean, it is very much that book where, I mean, I was flicking through, going, oh yeah, this is the sort of birthday, Christmas present for those people who are just in the process of waking up, because there's a lot of stuff that you go, oh yeah, that explains why they're doing
Mm.
this, and it's joining a lot of joining the dots.
Yeah, there is a lot of dot joining in there, a lot. Um, and it's all sort of geared toward the same end, which is make us increasingly more stupid and thereby gullible to buy the next nonsense that they've already planned to roll out
Mm.
in 5 years' time or whatever. Um, and this is the thing. It's an incremental process, and it started. The best date I've got is 1808 when this all started, and they've been doing the David Icke sort of what does he call it? The tiptoe,
Oh
totalitarian tiptoe.
yes,
They've been doing that since 1808, and it ramped up big style in 1950. They really turned the screws in 1950.
and it does feel now like it's being ramped up even higher because
Yeah,
ordinary people are beginning to notice
yeah,
certain things. I mean, I'm sure most of my audience is awake, of course, to
mm,
all the stuff because of the guests and the
yeah.
commentary that we have. But I think, Mr. Starmer himself is doing a massive job of waking people up,
He is.
showing how democracy is dead,
Mm,
that it's not even probably a sensible thing in the first place, how little actually MPs do anything. And I did a piece the other day about, and somebody sent it to me, how the MPs, if you go to the government website and put in what do MPs do, they've changed what they used to it used to say they represent you. They don't even pretend now. They have
no,
no job description,
yeah.
so
Well,
they're
they
not even
do.
represent.
They do, but it's not a public one. There's a full
Well,
chapter.
exactly.
There's a full chapter in the book on that, explaining what Parliament does, what MPs do, who really runs the country, and it's got bugger all to do with that lot.
Mm.
They're,
And yet you still get people writing their petitions and
yeah.
writing to their MP
Wow.
and saying, "Oh, please, can
What's
you
that
not do that?"
phrase? What's that? Only children protest.
Right?
Adults do things.
Yes. And around the world, we do see other countries. You mentioned France before we were recording. They don't just sit idly by and go, "Oh dear, what can we do?" They go, "Right, we're just going to stop this. We'll get the slurry trucks and just
Yeah.
pump it straight into their,
Yeah.
into Parliament." Whereas we're just too polite.
I'm not so sure whether we're too polite or not. I think it's more to do with the massive amount of dumbing down. I hate the phrase
Mm.
dumbing down because we're not dumb. We're just redacted. We're heavily constricted. We're certainly not dumb. But it's this movement, this agenda that's been foisted on us to actually make us cognitively barren. Nobody's got critical thinking skills. Very few people.
No. And I mean, we saw that during the COVID pandemic
Yeah,
when we were asked to do the most crazy things,
yeah.
and people were just, standing outside bashing saucepans and clapping for people who were
Well,
not anywhere near. I mean, come on. There
COVID
does come a
was,
point.
what's that meme? COVID was an IQ test.
It really was. And it was so worrying how many failed it.
I said to my wife at the time when the first lockdown started, I said, this is going to last 2 weeks. It's so full of holes. And look how long it went on.
Yes, I know. I mean, it's absolutely, and of course, how vehement people were if you went against
Mm,
the main narrative,
yeah.
and how angry. And of
Yeah.
course, we all know, and everybody's lost friends and family because of, not necessarily because of the blooming virus or the vaccine that followed.
Through
You just
argument.
lost friends because they vehemently disagreed with you. I mean, and now it's very hard to sort of repatriate people
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they doubled down. They were going to sort of go, oh yeah, we all went crazy. I forgive you. Let's have a hug and make up. It seems that a lot of people are still saying, no, no, I can't talk to you about that,
Mm.
which is very strange. Seeing
Well, I
as,
just I just found the whole thing validation for not having any more than 3 to 5 close friends.
well, I suppose that's true, isn't it? I have to say though, I found a whole new bunch of friends,
Yeah.
and actually, you tune in to people on your wavelength,
Yeah.
and they're so open and honest,
Mm.
and
Mm.
much more interesting than my former friends.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's just the state of how it is.
It's just growth. That's all it is. It just encourages growth. I mean, that's what they're doing now. Politicians. I think probably their job title really ought to be to wake the people up.
Mm,
Because I'm pretty sure that in any parliament around the world, they have huddles. And I think somebody will come up with a bright idea that's another imposition on the public. And they'll all sit there cackling, going, they'll never go for this. This is too wild.
yeah,
And yet we do. And they can't
yeah.
they can't devise anything stupid enough that the public won't go for.
Yeah, that is, I mean, that's a big worry.
Yeah.
That is a big worry. But some people who are awake, now we spoke briefly before we started recording because I know you're in the UK at the moment, but you're thinking of moving out.
Bit more than
So,
thinking.
yeah, well, so many people seem to be doing that I talk to, and it's a bit of a worry because if all you leave behind are those that are happy to comply and go along, or not necessarily happy to, but just continue to,
Yeah.
regardless, or
Yeah.
don't have any backbone or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it is, too frightened, too nervous, and some people genuinely are unable to. I understand that, of course. But if all the people with the critical thinking skills, the common sense, and thinking, actually, yeah, we're going, what's going to happen to the country?
Um, does it matter?
Well, to some of us,
The
it
guys
does
that are still
because,
here will just carry on regardless. I mean, Britain is already a service industry. There's
mm,
there's no industry here anymore. All the skilled jobs are outsourced all over the world. AI is coming in with that big boot. And what we're going to find is a situation where I think where we're going, the middle class is being sort of wiped out and all the rest of it. I think we're going to be in a situation where we'll have those that work and those that don't. And there's subdivisions within each of those. But I don't. When I say those that work, I'm talking about menial tasks, service
yes,
industry tasks. Waiters, waitresses, chefs, and all that
the
kind of.
things that AI can't do.
Yeah,
at the
I don't
moment.
I don't think there's any skill. I mean, the biggest job I think in the next 5 years is going to be a programmer for AI
Well,
because
we
even the machines are going to repair themselves, but they still
yes.
they still need a coder. So I think that's going to be the only people that work.
Well, those that we need very smart people who are very awake, who can do reverse coding for the AI.
We
So
haven't got
maybe
to
that
that
it.
chapter in the book yet, but I put the boot in on AI as well.
Yes.
It's not what it's cracked up to be. It's just a mirror. It's the mirror of how stupid we are.
Yes. Well, this is it. I mean, I've met people who say they have a great relationship with AI in terms of thinking that they've got one step ahead of it, and they. I mean, some people treat it almost like God. You
Well,
know, it's now
if you look
this.
at where the the supposed intelligence that it's built on, that it draws from, is the collective stupidity of humanity for the last 100 years.
Mm,
And where we are now is a result of that idiocy and failure in education and all the rest of it. All this does is it just produces a parrot in a cage that gives us the same answers quicker.
yes, and sometimes with the illusion that it's thinking,
Yeah, yeah.
which of course it isn't at all.
If it draws from the same nonsense that's brought us to this point, how can it be our savior?
Mm. And we need that critical thinking and common sense to realise
Yeah.
that that is what it's doing.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great tool. I use it a lot for research because it pulls legal stuff, case law documents. It pulls that out for fun so fast. Um, but ask it to talk about how your microwave is turning your kitchen into a radiation bath, and it goes very quiet.
Yes. Well, the obvious answer there is to throw the bloody microwave away. The
Oh,
same place that
yeah,
you threw the television away
yeah,
in the skip.
yeah.
So anyway, it's a great read. It's good fun. You raise a smile at the same time because that is your writing style, which is
Yeah.
great, and we work out why we're so stupid. And you're working on other books. I mean,
Mm.
you were saying to me you can sit there for a 8 hour day or 18 hours,
18
whatever,
hours a day
18 hours
sometimes. Yeah,
tapping away,
yeah.
which I have to say is quite envious for somebody who's just written a novel, and it's like, oh, a bit word blind at the end of the day. The poor old eye is revolving around, and that's the good eye, not the artificial one. Um, so tell us about some of the other stuff that people can expect
Right.
or is available to you,
Okay.
available from
So
you.
we have to take a bit of a detour now because it's still based on that book. But about probably a third of the way through writing that one, the Great Brain Robbery. Um, this is a spoiler alert. But the whole problem that we're faced with, the reason why we are so stupid, is that they withdrew the education system, and it was incremental from 1808 onwards, and the bulk of it all happened towards the early 1900s and the late 1800s. What they did, I mean, most people don't even realize that there are two education systems, and one of them is called the Prussian education system, and one of them is called the classical education system. And the stark difference between those two is that one teaches you how to think, and the other one teaches you what to think.
Right.
It's quite obvious which one we've been lumped with.
Mm.
But the Prussian education system is basically designed to corral minds and create citizens that are compliant, obedient workers and militarize them if needed. So that's what we've had. And it really ramped up in the 50s. And I think, I mean, their finest moment, I'm sure they believe, was in about 1970, 72 with Edward Heath's government when they deployed the comprehensive system against us, the comprehensive schooling.
I was unfortunately one of those
Yeah,
that
yeah,
ended up in that
yeah, me too.
comprehensive
Me
system.
too. Not for long though. So what that does is it focuses on compliance, obedience, and I mean, you just need to look at Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd, and that is talking exactly about the Prussian education system, just rubber stamping compliant citizens out the conveyor belt. Whereas the other system didn't go away, but that was sequestered into the hierarchical aspect of society, which is
Mm.
elitist families and all the rest of it, private schooling, Eton, Harrow, Winchester, all these guys, 30 grand a term. So that was the barrier to entry for the rest of us plebs. Who can pay 30 grand a term when there's 4 or 5 terms sometimes.
Yes.
Um, it, we don't get it. So when you look at the results of the classical education system, um, the kids that leave that system don't get a job. They don't work for somebody. They don't become a cog in the machine. They've got the cognitive functionality to create a machine that they turn the handle of.
Mm.
They're not a cog in someone else's machine. So that what's left to us is to be those nuts and bolts.
And of course, they need, those people who are turning the handle need those that are doing the work.
Yeah,
And so, what would be the point,
yeah,
from their point of view,
yeah.
of having everybody on the classical system? Because then nobody's going to bloody well do the jobs.
Well,
So they've had to
nobody's
make
gonna
us think.
nobody's gonna do the jobs now because
Well,
AI's here.
yes.
So, one way or another, they've got what they want. So, when people talk to me about, well, we can't let them win. And I think, well, hang on a minute, they have won because we're all stupid. And we cannot fathom out what is going on with government, what is going on with the systems and the establishments. We can have a guess, but we can't actually fathom it out based in
Mm.
logic, because we no longer have the ability to process using logic.
Well, I mean, one of the problems, it seems to me, and I was saying this very early on when I started to sort of go down the rabbit holes and see what was going on behind the scenes, was that clearly this whole system of government that we have is not viable to us. And it does seem that everybody's going, but reform will change it, or this person will change it, or that person will change it. And you just think, no, basically all of that has got, we need a sea change if we're going to do anything.
The Who sang about that. Meet the old boss, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Um,
Yeah,
it's still a system and it's still not for the people. So,
exactly.
as long as they can keep this divide. I mean, I've realized I've not answered your question yet, and I am coming to it. Um, so what I've realized through about a third through writing that book was that they've done us in by removing the proper education system, teaching people how to be robust, critical thinkers, self and
Mm.
all the rest of it. So what I've decided to do, the mission at the moment that's keeping me very, very busy is we're building a new company. I've got a team together and we're building a new company. And the marketing guy has told me not to open my mouth too much about it, but we're going to smash the education system and we're going to provide the classical education system to everyone, anyone that wants it. Um,
Is it 30 grand a term?
no, it's you can take at least 3 zeros off that. Um, it's when
And that's how you do it, isn't it? If it's affordable to
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. So that's what the other three books are that you were alluding to that
Yes.
were released at the same date as that. Um, I've looked long and hard um, to find the classical education system that's obtainable for as cheap as possible, basically. And it's very, very hard to get hold of. There's one book, and I always recommend this book. It's called The Trivium by Sister Miriam Joseph, and it's early 1900s. If you can get a copy, it's a great start. It will switch the power on. Um, but it's not an education in and of itself. It's just pointers. to
Right.
where to go to get the classic books and all the rest of it. And it sounds very boring, you know, reading classics, Homer's Iliad and things like that, Aristotle, and it's okay, really boring. I'd rather watch a Marvel movie, which is fine. Um, but watching a Marvel movie doesn't give you the critical thinking skills that you're missing, that is ruining
Mm.
your world and your life. So you need a little bit of self-discipline. So to cut to the chase, what I've done is I've started writing the classical education system, and it's all based in a thing called the Trivium and the Quadrivium, which is 7 books of the rudiments of that education. So I've written the first 3 books, the Trivium, my version of the Trivium. So I've sent you the links, so you'll be able to stick them on the end.
Yeah, I'll put them in the description. So
Um,
just give us an example of the sort of thing that what might be you would be demonstrating was an example
well,
of that kind of learning.
grammar is the first stage.
Right.
This goes, I mean, they start at 5 years old, in 5 or 6 years old in the classical schooling system. The equivalent of that in the comprehensive system is phonics.
Yes.
They teach kids how to build words and pronounce things and all the rest of it. Um, but also combined with that is Latin. And the origin of most words used anywhere in the world, apart from Turkish, in the Western speaking world anyway, the
Yes.
origin is
Yes.
either Latin or Arabic. So you've got a 50% chance of understanding every language in the Western world if you know how to speak Latin. And everybody says it's a dead language, blah blah blah. But it's not a dead language at all. If you go to Vatican City and want to take some money out of the cash machine, the bloody cash machine is in Latin.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it,
Right.
it's not a dead language. It's been sold to us as a dead language so that we don't go into it and learn it.
And I mean, it was in on the curriculum
Yeah,
years ago.
every judge,
And
every judge speaks Latin.
yeah.
So, so yeah, that's the first stage of it. Um, Understanding how words are built, the etymology and the phonic aspect of words, understanding where they come from, how they're contracted, and all the rest of it. And once you've got that stage, you then get into logic, which is the second book or the second phase of the trivium. And it's Socratic dialogue, and um, you learn how to tear arguments apart based on building the logics of an argument. You know, you've got premises, and then you've got the conclusion. And if any one of the premises is faulty, it alters the conclusion. So it
Mm.
it's a very, very thorough system. And then finally in the trivium, you've got rhetoric. So like I said, the first part of it is grammar, then it's logic, then it's rhetoric. Rhetoric's had a bad rep lately because, you know, when people say, "Oh, look, have you heard his rhetoric?"
Yes.
It's called a malapropism. They've twisted the meaning of it, and everybody uses it in a negative context now. Um, is it a malapropism? No, it's not. No, forget that. It's not a malapropism. But what they've done is they've confused the meaning of rhetoric into something that's negative. But rhetoric is just basically speaking with a convincing manner. So
Right.
it's about having authority in what you're saying. So nobody learns that anymore, apart from the private schooling kids.
Yes, of course.
Which is why most, you know, Eton turned out 19 prime ministers. So they were clearly good at rhetoric.
I mean, one of the things that I've always noticed when I was younger, those that went to sort of private school that I may have met here, there, and wherever, which wasn't often, but they had this amazing confidence.
Yeah.
Absolutely, just oozed a
Yeah.
confidence. And even now, I'll meet people, and you go, "You went to private school." You just know it
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
they carry themselves,
Yeah.
and they're going, "Yes, this is how we do it. This is," and there's no question, there's no
Yeah.
doubt
Yeah.
in their mind.
Yeah.
And then the people I'm with, are going, "Oh, is it? Is that how? Oh, we worship at your feet. Sorry, you are a
Well,
god."
yeah,
And that's
you've got leaders and you've got followers.
yes,
And the classic system trains leaders,
yes,
whereas the Prussian system, by definition, trains followers.
yes, and they
Um,
do very well at that.
yeah, yeah. So,
And I suppose we see that in simple ways all the time when you get an election comes up and you are voting for a choice that's been given to you. You haven't elected that choice. You haven't, set the
yeah,
candidates
yeah,
up,
yeah.
but you're given this, and it's that fool's choice,
Yeah,
isn't
of
it?
course
That
it
you
is. Of
think
course it is.
we think we have the choice because look, we can choose between 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
But no one said, well, what about somebody else
yeah,
out of that?
yeah.
And another one that came up with me recently, I was helping somebody, and they got this thing where it goes to court, and you had to fill in the form, and it says, what do you plead, guilty or not guilty? And I thought, well, there's no case to answer here, so you don't plead any of those
Have
things.
the third choice, please.
Yeah, same with like flat Earth, round Earth. Well, maybe there's a different one. Why are we always given it's this or that?
Yeah.
And we just stay within those narrow confines and we don't think outside the box. Although we all say, oh, yes, I'm thinking outside, I'm doing blue sky thinking and all this sort of nonsense.
You have to be. I mean, there's not many people that get the indoctrination in the Prussian system that can think outside the box. It's a very rare being indeed that can break that programming because it is so intense and so thorough.
Mm.
It takes a lot to break it. And of course, the older you get, the longer you've been used to thinking that way. And it's not impossible to break it because I've broken it.
Mm.
But I had to break it by going through the classical system. And that wasn't easy because I didn't go to a school for it. I had to scrape it together from all over the place.
Yes.
So it's not impossible, but it's very, very difficult. Very difficult.
Do you think that if kids were not entered into, let's call it the state education, that their natural ability would err them onto some of those skills in the classic? I mean, they wouldn't have read the classics necessarily, but that asking why. You ask a child and he'll always say, a little kid who's yet gone to school will say, why, mummy? Why? Why do we do this? Why is it that? Why is it big? Why is it small? They're inquisitive. That's knocked out of them so very early on.
Well, you actually said it there. They ask mummy. Back in the day, education was given by parents and peers and the community. And if you wanted to be a master at something, I mean, these guys back in the day used to spend a lifetime on one subject.
Mm.
And they were the master, Talk about any of the artists, Monet, Picasso, anyone like that. That's all they did. That's all they did for their life. So when a child wanted to get into that realm, or somebody spotted that they had a talent, that's when they went to what became the private schooling system. They went to the universities and the classical domains, and they really, really honed their edge on that. But you see, beginning in the mid 1800s, they shattered the family with the Industrial Revolution. So the parents were not present. The kids were thrown into mandatory schooling
Mm.
and didn't get that community parental upbringing, training, knowledge, education. They didn't get it. They just got what the government offered, and the government was, we've got them. We can make an army out of this lot, and they won't question us for a second.
No.
And it's not got any better. It's really not.
Yeah. And we've seen that there is this bill coming through I forget the actual title of it now. It's something like the wellness bill with children or something. But the bill itself is saying that if you home educate, we will tell you what you have to home educate. It is now mandatory, whatever it is. This is the curriculum. So no longer can children follow what they want to do and what their parents would like them to do. whether that's following a religious creed or whatever, they are going to, and this is going to affect all the home educators. And I know, because another friend of mine is suffering at the hands of them chasing them, saying you've got to have your kids follow this curriculum.
Well, it's an easy question. I've done this. I've done this with my girls when they were at secondary, at high school, and the teacher wanted to fine me for their unauthorized absences. So I went in to the head teacher's office, sat down, and I said, "Look, when you can demonstrate you have a higher authority over my children than I do, then I'll pay the fine that you want. But until that point, just leave it alone because you will never win in court. You might have legislation, but you cannot prove ownership of these children like I can."
Yes.
And it just fizzles out at that point because A, they don't want it to become public knowledge that they have no rights to say these things. And B, they can't win because by winning, it demonstrates tyranny.
Yes, absolutely.
So they can't do it. So that's all that people need to say, show me a higher right than mine over these children, and I'll play the game. Until that point, sod off.
Yes, absolutely. But they do like to send their letters to continually
Of course they do.
say, we're in charge of this legislation. We can prove it, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
somebody somewhere in a
Of course.
smoke-filled room wrote some words on a bit of paper and everyone says, yes, that will do it.
Yeah. And
That's it.
yeah, so I mean the obvious antidote to that is, well, how does that apply to me?
Yeah. Well,
Governance
like so much of legislation.
well, yeah, governance is by consent. It's by consent. So show me where I consented, and then we can deal with it. And until that time, bye.
And going back to your original thing about being why are we so stupid in the Great Brain Robbery, I mean, that is a very key thing that, of course, I get emails from, I've spoken about on the show, and I've had many guests sort of just reminding us that legislation it's just a stick, as you've pointed out, a big stick to beat us with, but it's not a truism. It's only true if you agree to it and you be part of it and you sign up to it and get on the electoral roll and all that, be a citizen, blah blah blah. But getting people to see that, to have that I was going to say a mist, but it's thicker than a mist. That thick dark cloud of there's only legislation.
Yeah.
Is the big problem.
Yeah.
And so it won't help that people like yourself can go to a different place. We need all these people to sort of remind people.
Yeah.
But you are doing it because you're writing these books. But can people? Do you think? I mean, I've not been on the circuit that long, compared to somebody like you and what have you. But when I go around and do talks and things, there does seem to me to be a lot of people love discussing it, talking it, and theorizing it. And they just seem to be in a circuit pattern. They don't really want to move on. They're still watching the fear. They're still enjoying another little bit of rabbit hole stuff. Oh, look, I just discovered this. But they don't actually seem to be standing in their power and doing something and saying, I'm going to make this, this is my stance now. And I guess that's still because even though they might know, they're still blighted by this education.
But I mean,
and this.
also a lot of people live for drama.
Well, true.
What would they do if they had peace? What on earth would there be to do if they had peace in their lives?
Well, that's we all are seeking that, aren't we? We all say, oh, if only I had a bit of peace, if only the neighbours would shut up, if only they didn't keep writing to me, what would you do? And I mean, I've pointed that out in the show. We, instead of sort of saying what we don't want, what is it that we do want?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Saying you
That's
want
a
peace
scary
and you want
question.
freedom.
That's a scary question for some people.
Yeah. What does freedom mean?
What do you want? Most people don't even think about it. Again, which is down to what I'm doing with this new company. Let's give people the tools to actually sit there and contemplate where they are, what they think, and how to think properly using logical, Socratic dialogue. And it's just it doesn't just open your eyes. It what did Michael Caine say? Blows the bloody doors off.
It blows the bloody doors off. Yeah, absolutely.
It really
Well,
does.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we have been so easily distracted and are continually
Yeah,
distracted with the old dopamine hit
yeah,
of Facebook and all these things. And I've made this point many times. I'm sure people are sick of it. But you know, now people are taking their wretched phone up to the loo to be amused while they're doing a biological function because they cannot sit still and allow their thoughts to wander anymore
yeah.
or to think in any way.
Guilty. The problem is that's the only time I get to check messages because I'm so busy. I'm
Well,
so
there we
busy.
are.
Yeah,
So busy.
it's the only downtime I get to check messages.
There's a I forget the outfit. What is it called? The Idler. There was a magazine. I don't know if it's still out there called The Idler, and it is about that. And to be honest, it's obviously aimed for people of a certain class
Mm,
who have got the time to be idle.
yeah.
But I remember hearing about it years and years ago when I used to listen to Radio 4, which I of course don't listen to now. Back in the day when it was actually worth listening to, and I was listening to this chap, and it was about, you know, we've become so busy that we're constantly finding something to do, usually work for somebody else
Yeah.
and all of that, and
Yeah.
we're answering emails or we're doing this, and we cannot be idle because idlism, if that's a word, being idle has been made to seem a bad thing. And they were promoting, no, it's not a bad
No,
thing.
it's not.
Sit
Yeah.
in the country, sit,
Yeah.
you know, in the quiet and allow your thoughts to
Mm,
gather and listen to your intuition
yeah.
and enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And
Contemplation is it's being portrayed as like you say, being idle.
because we're supposed to be productive all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well, is being productive all the time not commensurate with being part of the Prussian system and being a consumer, a user, conditioned
Mm.
and conforming. That's how they want it. That is how they want it.
And every time I hear, you know, we're a progressive society and we're doing, and I always say, what are we progressing to? Because actually now it seems I know what we're progressing to, and it doesn't look very good to me.
Well,
I'd rather just
it
sit
used to be,
under a
yeah,
tree.
it used to be called
But
enslavement. That's the path we're on.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And yet people can't say, oh no, this is the modern way, and we, you know,
Mm,
and you think back. One person used to go to work, and the other one stayed at home, nurtured the children,
yeah.
looked after the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you can't even afford to have both of you going to work
You're right.
because the bills are so high
Yeah.
and you're working long
Yeah.
hours. And of course,
You're right.
university has been, you know, education, 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 as Tony Blair said. Let's separate the family by sending children to university 300 miles away so that they settle there, and that split the child from the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's happened
What
everywhere,
they've
you
done
know.
is they've at any cost they've broken this this nurture thing between peers, community, families, villages, whatever. They've broken that link. So
Yeah.
they've fractured everybody's mind into the only source that they can get to feed their mind with is theirs. That's what they've done. I mean, like
And
you
we,
say, when you were talking about the family of when I was a kid, most of the people that I knew, you'd all live in a semi-detached on an estate or something, and dad would go out to work 9 to 5. Mum would be at home all day doing fabulous things in the kitchen, looking after the house, nurturing the children. They'd have a decent car and they'd get a summer holiday every year.
yeah.
And that was on one wage. They'd also have a mortgage and be able to pay it. Mostly, I mean, I remember when credit cards came in. So there was no credit, there was no debt, there was just a
No.
mortgage. And it was fine. And the whole country ran beautifully. People had jobs, there was work, we were innovative, we had industry, we were the leaders for everything. then they fractured the family, and that was like the turning point for all of it. Now, like you say, there's mum and dad both working three jobs each. They're up to their eyeballs in debt. The car's financed, and when they go on holiday, if they go on holiday, it's that's also on a credit card, and it's just this mountain of debt. Just that's the way of life now. Speak to anybody that's sort of 30, 35 years old now. They don't know what it's like to live without debt.
No,
It's
that's
like it's a
frightening, isn't
factor
it?
of life now,
Yeah. I mean,
and it's
you know,
necessary.
people used to put money in little jars.
Yeah,
That's for the so and so.
yeah,
That's for the,
yeah,
when the baker, when the butcher, the baker, they used to come to the door.
yeah.
They used
Yeah.
to deliver,
The pop
and you could go,
man.
oh yes, there's my daily bread, and
Yeah,
the kids would take the beer bottles back and
yeah,
get through and salt them or
exactly. The
whatever.
pop man. Um,
We don't do all this sort of picking out your bloody recycling only. I mean, we
well,
all know it's a con.
yeah,
We all know it's an absolute con.
that's also had a good kicking in the book as well.
Yeah, good. And other things like youth centres, where kids of all sorts of different ages would meet with adults, and again, you
Yeah,
could contemplate,
yeah,
discuss,
yeah,
and have in effect poor man debates,
yeah.
as it were, as
Mm.
opposed to your university debates. But you could, and all of that, and of course they tried to shut the pubs down, especially they wouldn't let them go during COVID, so that you could sit there with your mates and go, "Do you think this is a load of old bollocks?" Yeah, I do.
You know what that was all
Yeah, well,
about? Do you know that what that was all about? First, they
go
stopped.
on.
I was in Turkey at the time. They stopped the smoking in pubs, and then they started shutting them down. And I could be wrong, but most revolutions throughout history were built in taverns.
Mm,
And so if you get rid of the taverns, how do we get rid of taverns? Well, it's usually a pint and a ciggy. So we'll get rid of that
yeah.
one first, and then it'll totally kibosh the clientele because they'll stay at home drinking Tennent's Super out of six packs from Asda.
Nice and cheap. Keep them. Keep them. I remember I used to do my history walks and what have you, and read a bit. And of course, coffee and hot chocolate, which are stimulants,
Mm,
came in around the 1740s.
mm.
And you had the coffee taverns, as you said. And I remember the authorities reading about this, that the authorities were worried
Yeah,
because instead of getting drunk and forgetting their revolutionary ideas when they
we're
met,
getting sharper.
they were getting sharper
Yeah,
and continued these
yeah,
discussions because of coffee, and they were
yeah,
very worried about
yeah.
this.
Well, I think a thinking, articulate, confident speaking man or woman, by definition, is a threat to the
Yes,
establishment.
yeah, they're
So,
rocking the boat with their ideas. How
yeah.
dare they? What a
Imagine how
better
they're
way
gonna
to live.
imagine how they're gonna feel when we're all getting the same education that their kids are.
Yeah, and that's a very laudable aim. So we're going to have put the links in the description.
Yeah.
We'll wind up it's lovely to talk to you again. Just to remind everybody, the big stick, and the title is not important, which people still often tell me. Said, Richard, have you heard of this book? And it's good. Yeah, I've had Paul on the show, by the way. Thank you. Go and check it.
Yeah.
But people are still reading those books. Just quickly define what they're about and how useful they are to people.
Well, if you're in debt and you're sick of it, and why wouldn't you be? You can bring contract law to bear on the situation, and in 9.9 cases out of 10, I butchered that, didn't I? Yeah.
That
In the
logic
vast
is really
majority of
working.
cases, there's no contract in place.
Yeah,
And there must be a contract in place for them to have standing if they want to claim or use the courts, and it doesn't exist. So yeah, if you're struggling with debt, you can do a lot worse than have a look at these books because it really explains the whole situation, what they've done, how they did it, and where we're at now, and then how to resolve it through contract law. And you don't need to be a lawyer, and you don't need to know the ins and outs of contract law. Just a smattering of the basics of contract law will kibosh their entire effort.
absolutely. Yeah, so that's the big stick, and the title is not important. If
But
you
the,
just put that
the
into
title is unimportant, lays the whole game out. The big stick is for what do you do after that?
Yeah,
That's about going after them for what they've done.
right. It makes a good combination because one leads after the
Yeah,
other.
yeah.
And then, of course, we've got the Great Brain Robbery, Why Are We So Stupid? So we can work out why we're so stupid. And then you've got the other books. So there we are. I think that keep people busy till Christmas. Gives you a bit of time to write the next
Well,
set.
yeah, there's four. There's four. They're written, but they just need editing. But that, yeah, that's one of the powers of ADHD. It's a superpower, and it gives you that ability just to focus.
Yeah, there you are. You see, there's a benefit to everything.
Mm.
Well, especially when they say it isn't a benefit if they're trying to make you stupid.
Well, I mean,
Paul,
you could take lots of drugs for it, can't you?
well,
If
if
you
you
want
if
to
you if
try
you
and,
wish to make
yeah, if
if
you
you
want
wish
to
to
try
make
and
the
them.
pharmaceutical company a bit richer, yeah, help yourself to those little white pills.
Oh, God. No,
Ah,
what a
dear, oh
thought.
dear.
What a thought.
Paul, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining me. Show the book one more time. There it is. And where is it available? Presumably places like Amazon
Well,
and all of
the the paperback is available on Amazon, as are all every other book. But the I've done the audio version of that, and that's available on Gumroad, um, because Gumroad are quick, cheap, and they're not Amazon.
Yeah, that is the big thing.
Yeah. So if you stick the
Nice.
links in the description, then
I will.
people can
I will
find
have no
it.
luck because you've sent me the email, so I can copy and paste them,
Yeah.
and they will be there.
Yeah.
So there we go. Brilliant stuff. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. Now you know why we're stupid, but the next thing is to do something about it, of course. So
Yeah.
I'll be back, of course, with more of my interviews, although not so many now. As you know, I'm sort of trying to get myself onto the land and do some of the, trying not to be so stupid, basically. and be free, whatever that means. But in the meantime, check out Paul's books, and we'll see you again. From Paul and I, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.